March 24th, 2024. That's how long ago this session was, but when I look back at the footage, I've realised it was such a blast. Now, I went with some friends who had never been karting before, so you know I have to add a crash and an overtake counter. Now, I've got the 360 camera set up, so you can see behind me, and trust me, things get hectic. So by this point, we've done the mandatory yellow light test, and the light goes green here. I slip up the inside of this driver in red before getting a better exit out of this hairpin, allowing me to get a second overtake. Now I quickly catch up to the driver in green, but before I can think about overtaking, there's a red light. But once we get going again, I have a quicker reaction time, which allows me to get through very easily. And now it's time to focus on catching up to these two drivers ahead. So I'm coming up the up ramp and I can slide down the inside of this driver on the right, because he's left a bit of space on the inside. And now I can sweep around the outside of this driver in the green. Now after a few easier overtakes, I catch up with this driver in the blue. He's a bit quicker than the rest. I can see he's hugging the inside through this corner though, so I go for the grippery outside line. But they hold their line well, forcing me to back out, meaning that overtake doesn't count. Although I know it should be fairly easy to catch up with them again. I decide to use the boost button on the ramp, which gives me a massive overspeed, allowing me to catch up again. But before I could pull off the overtake, one of my friends has binned in the wall, which I'm really not surprised about. But on the restart from the yellows, I managed to overtake, because unfortunately for them, they couldn't see it went green until they got to the bottom of the ramp. Now I need to try and catch up to these two ahead. And I don't find that too hard, and overtaking the first driver isn't too hard as well. So now I've caught up to the second driver, and in the corner coming up, they cover the inside, so I'm going to have to look around the outside, allowing me to go for an attempted switchback. But in a stroke of terrible luck, the light goes yellow as I go for the overtake. Therefore, I have to give the position back, and it goes green immediately after that. Now after a quick double overtake there, I want to ask you, how many overtakes do you think I can get by the end of the two sessions? Now I have a couple laps of clean air at this point, but eventually I catch up to this driver in blue. Now the people I'm racing against are getting better and better as they get more and more experience with the track, which is making my overtakes a lot harder to pull off. I tried to look around the outside against this driver in blue, but they defended it pretty well. So instead I'm going to look on the exit of this corner and use the boost button to give myself an extra bit of power up the ramp, and that allows me to get a good overtake. Okay, so this next overtake's pretty stupid from me. I tried to go for a switchback, but I accidentally bumped them out of the way, so I have to let them go back ahead. But once I've let them back ahead, I prepare for the next corner. I stay on the outside, preparing to cut in when we get to the exit. And then I boost on the straight to get past them and to confirm my overtake on the very next hairpin. This leads to me being on the tail of this driver in red. I plan to go to the inside, but they go very wide in this corner, and if we look behind us, I can see they hit the wall. Now that incident causes the lights to go yellow, but when we go back to green, I'm more alert than the driver ahead. This allows me to go around their outside during this left-hander, causing a very easy overtake. Now a lap later, I'm catching up to this other driver in green. And I thought about going for the overtake at the bottom of this ramp and down this straight, but I decided I was a bit too far back. But on the exit, they go really wide, allowing me to pull off the overtake. Now I catch up to another driver in the exact same position as I caught up to the previous driver, and the exact same thing happens where I back off before going into the corner, but then they go really wide in the exit, allowing me to get past there. I think this shows how torquey these electric karts are, because you just can't control them if you're not used to them. And now I'm catching up to a cluster of a few karts, and I'm going to make a few overtakes back to back. And whilst I do this, I want to give my thoughts on this track. So I'm not the biggest fan of this short layout that they use for the public sessions, because all the corners are very similar to each other. But I know they use the old layout for the member sessions, which is across 3 floors, and I think much better. But the karts they use here are great. Now I've caught back up to this same driver in blue that I had trouble overtaking earlier. And coincidentally, I go for a similar move trying to go around the outside. But this time I've learned from my mistake, and instead of committing, I stay back. Instead, I used what worked last time. I go for a cutback onto the up ramp and then use the boost button to give myself that extra boost in power. So now I catch up to this driver in the orange suit, but this driver was surprisingly hard to overtake. After I look down the inside for a quick easy overtake, I realise that isn't an option, so I go for a switchback instead. But they get a decent exit, so I'm not able to pull off the overtake on that straight, so I have to wait a bit longer. They've clearly learned to use the boost button on this up ramp, because I use it as well, but I don't gain on them very much at all. I decide to follow them through the next couple of corners instead of going for any ballsy overtakes. But I do set up for the next right-hander in case they screw up, which they kind of do, allow me to look around the outside this following corner. But due to this other driver, I don't feel comfortable going around the outside, so instead I look for a switchback. But they cover me off perfectly on the next corner, staying ahead as I do get a quick overtake on that driver in green. But even after all that trying, I still need to overtake this driver in orange, which is proving to be a real challenge. I'm just following him at this point, seeing if he makes any mistakes that I could potentially capitalise on. But immediately the light goes yellow and we see it's for this incident. And somehow, after being so good at defending, the driver in orange just joins the incident at the back. But at the end of the day, this is what public rental karting is made for. But when we got back to green flag running, I got some clean air which I capitalised on. But eventually I catch up to this driver in red, who, let's say, wasn't quite as challenging to overtake as the last driver. And well, I can cover off the exit pretty easily and then use the boost button to give myself that extra speed. But a lap or two later, I catch up to another driver in a red suit, who immediately overtakes the driver in green, allowing me to get through very easily as well. But this is one of my quickest friends who's actually been karting once or twice before, and they'd prefer not to be beaten by me. I think my overtake might be easier than expected when I come down this ramp, but they instead use the opportunity to overtake one of the drivers ahead. Now I yet again follow them through, gaining me another quick position. Now I have to have full focus on overtaking my mate ahead. They went wide there, allowing me to re-catch up with them, but it'd be great if they did that when I was close behind them, which is exactly what they do during this left-hander. Therefore, I pull alongside again, but this time I've got the better line for the next corner, so I'm able to get ahead. But if we cut to the behind camera here, they go for a crazy move to try and overtake me, which doesn't really end up going great. Anyway, we move on from that, and I'm now caught back up to the driver in blue. They go wide on this exit, so I cut onto their inside, and here the light changes, and I brake way too hard, and obviously someone bumps into the back of me. I don't really know why I did that, but maybe I thought the light was red? And it turns out that line change was actually for the end of the session, so I end up with 25 overtakes with a total of 4 crashes being in my vision, but I know there were more. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.